The scent of parchment and dust, mingled with faint notes of lavender and sun-warmed wood, was Alara's favorite perfume. It clung to her clothes, her hair, even the very air around her. Her bookstore, the storyteller's nook, was more than just a place of business. It was a sanctuary, a quiet haven nestled in the heart of Oakhaven, a village so picturesque it often felt like a carefully crafted illustration from one of her beloved fairy tales. Alara herself was a creature of quiet habits and gentle smiles. Her hair, the color of burnished copper, was usually braided loosely and tucked behind an ear, stray tendrils escaping to frame a face that was both thoughtful and kind. She moved through the narrow aisles of her shop with a grace born of familiarity, her fingers brushing over worn spines as if greeting old friends. Each book held a story, not just within its pages, but in its very existence. Who had read it? What secrets it had kept? What dreams it had inspired? Today the late afternoon sun slanted through the tall front windows, illuminating motes of dust, dancing in the air, and casting long golden stripes across the polished wooden floorboards. A gentle breeze, carrying the faint briny tang of the nearby sea, whispered through the open door, rustling the display of postcards by the counter. Alara was perched on a rolling ladder, carefully reshelving a first edition of forgotten local folklore, a smile playing on her lips. She often found herself lost in the stories she curated, especially those that spoke of Oakhaven's own peculiar magic. Oakhaven was a place steeped in history and hushed legends. It was a village where the cobblestone streets seemed to hum with echoes of the past, and where the ancient oak trees, from which the village took its name, truly felt like wise, silent sentinels. But of all the tales whispered between generations, one held a particular, irresistible allure for Alara: the legend of Whisperwind Cove. Whisperwind Cove was a secluded stretch of beach, accessible only by a winding, overgrown path through the cliffs at the edge of the village. It wasn't known for dramatic cliffs or crashing waves, but for something far more subtle and profound. According to the oldest texts in Alara's collection, and the hushed tones of the village elders, when the moon was just right, the tide at its lowest ebb, and the wind a specific, gentle sigh from the southwest, the air above the cove would carry faint, almost imperceptible sounds. Not the roar of the sea, nor the cry of gulls, but whispers. Fragments of forgotten memories, echoes of past hopes, soft sighs of long-lost dreams carried on the breeze. Villagers simply called them Whis. It was said that if you listened closely enough, with an open heart and a quiet mind, you could hear them. Not in words you understood, but in feelings, in impressions, in a profound sense of connection to all that had come before. Some believed they were the remnants of wishes made upon the sea, others, the lingering emotions of those who had loved and lost by the shore. Alara, a staunch believer in the magic that lay just beneath the surface of the everyday, desperately longed to experience the Whis for herself. She had read every account, studied the astronomical and tidal charts in old almanacs, trying to predict the elusive alignment. But so far, the Whis had remained just a legend, a tantalizing promise whispered on the pages of old books. She carefully placed the folklore book back on its shelf, her thoughts still lingering on the cove. A small bell tinkled softly above the door, announcing a new arrival. Alara descended the ladder, her gaze lifting to greet her customer. He was a man she hadn't seen before in Oakhaven, which was unusual in a village as small and close-knit as theirs. He stood just inside the doorway, a canvas messenger bag slung across his shoulder, his hands tucked into the pockets of a well-worn tweed jacket. He wasn't overtly striking, but there was an understated elegance about him, a quiet intensity in his posture. His hair was a rich, dark brown, falling slightly over intelligent gray eyes that swept slowly across the shelves, taking in every detail of the shop as if memorizing a map. He looked like someone who appreciated quiet corners and forgotten lore, a kindred spirit. "Good afternoon," Alara said, her voice soft and welcoming. "Can I help you find anything?" He turned, and his gaze met hers. There was a gentle, almost hesitant smile on his lips, and a warmth in his eyes that immediately put her at ease. "Good afternoon," he replied, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. "I hope I'm not disturbing your quiet contemplation. This place, it's wonderful." "Never a disturbance," Alara assured him, gesturing around the shop. "It's what it's for after all, a place for contemplation and discovery." He nodded slowly, still taking in the shelves. "Indeed. I'm new to Oakhaven, just settling in for a few weeks. My name is Rhys Alistair. He offered a hand and Alara took it. His grip was firm but gentle, his skin warm. Alara Vance, welcome to Oakhaven, Rhys, and to the Storyteller's Nook. A beautiful name for a beautiful place, he said, releasing her hand. I'm a cartographer of sorts. I specialize in old maps, forgotten routes, and the legends that often accompany them. I'm here doing some research, and I was told this was the place to find the true heart of Oakhaven stories. Alara's eyes lit up. A cartographer of legends. That's a wonderful description. You've certainly come to the right place. We have everything from ancient nautical charts to local folklore passed down through generations. What kind of legends are you interested in? He paused, his gaze thoughtful as it drifted back to a section near the back, where the more esoteric and rare books resided. I've heard whispers, if you'll pardon the pun, of a particular phenomenon unique to this coast. Something about whispers on the wind. Alara felt a little thrill run through her. It wasn't often that a newcomer, especially one as discerning as Rhys seemed to be, arrived with such specific knowledge of Oakhaven's most cherished and most elusive legend. Most tourists asked about the best fish and chips or the scenic walking trails. Ah, the Whis, she said, a soft smile touching her lips. Yes, Whisperwind Cove. It's one of Oakhaven's oldest and most mysterious tales. She walked over to the section he'd been observing. I have a few texts that touch on it. Some are more speculative than others, of course. Local accounts, old sailors' logs, even a few poetic interpretations. She pulled out a slim, leather-bound volume with faded gold lettering. This one, Coastal Echoes, has some of the earliest recorded mentions. Rhys took the book from her, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment. His touch was warm, and she felt a small, pleasant jolt. He opened the book carefully, his eyes scanning the delicate, aged pages. Fascinating, he murmured, more to himself than to her. The description here, the breath of forgotten dreams carried on the sea-kissed air. It's exactly as I imagined. You've heard about it before, Oakhaven? Alara asked, curious. He nodded. I stumbled upon a cryptic reference in a very old maritime atlas. A symbol, almost like a swirling eddy of sound, marked near this stretch of coast, with a single word whizzes beside it. It sparked my curiosity. I've been tracing similar anomalies in other parts of the world, places where natural phenomena seem to amplify or preserve emotional echoes. Oakhaven was next on my list. Alara felt a sense of wonder bloom in her chest. To meet someone who not only knew of the Whis, but shared her deep-seated fascination and even studied such phenomena globally, was truly extraordinary. It felt like finding a rare, forgotten bookmark tucked into the pages of her own life story. That's incredible, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've always been drawn to the legend. I've spent years trying to decipher the exact conditions required to witness the Whis. It's said to be incredibly rare, requiring a precise alignment of moon, tide, and wind. Rhys looked up from the book, a new light in his gray eyes. So you've researched it too? You believe in it? Oh, absolutely, Alara affirmed without hesitation. How could I not? In a world filled with stories, why should some remain just stories? And besides, she added, a hint of playful defiance in her voice, there's a certain magic in believing, isn't there? A genuine smile bloomed on Rhys's face, transforming his quiet intensity into something warmer, more approachable. There is, he agreed. A great deal of magic. I couldn't agree more, Alara Vance. He closed the book, running a thumb over its cover. May I borrow this? And perhaps a few others you might recommend on the subject? Of course, she said, gathering a small stack of books that she thought he might find interesting. These touch on the subject from different angles, some historical accounts, some poetic, and a few that are purely speculative. But all speak to the enduring mystery of the Whis. Rhys left that afternoon with a bag full of books and a promise to return. As the bell above the door tinkled again, signaling his departure, Alara found herself humming a little tune, a lightness in her step she hadn't felt in a long time. You Wish. The quiet hum of her shop felt different somehow, enriched by the new presence. Over the next few days, Rhys became a regular fixture at the Storyteller's Nook. He would arrive in the late afternoon, often with a travel mug of tea and a notebook filled with precise, elegant script. He never stayed long, but his visits were always significant. He would return the books he'd read, discuss his findings with Alara, and pick up new ones. Their conversations were never rushed, always thoughtful, drifting from the scientific exploration of sound phenomena to the philosophical implications of lingering emotions, and then back to the mundane charm of Oakhaven life. Alara found herself looking forward to his visits with an eagerness that surprised her. Whis had a way of listening that made her feel truly heard, his gray eyes attentive, his occasional nods encouraging. He shared snippets of his own travels, stories of other forgotten places, and their unique energies, always with a quiet reverence for the world's hidden wonders. He spoke of the emotional resonance of certain landscapes, the way places could hold on to moments, like old photographs in the air. One blustery Tuesday, as rain pattered against the windows, Alara was dusting a shelf of worn novels when Whis entered. He smelled faintly of damp wool and fresh sea air. "Good afternoon, Alara," he greeted, shaking droplets from his jacket. "It seems even the elements are having a spirited discussion today." Alara smiled. "Indeed. A good day for a cozy corner and a good book." She noticed he wasn't carrying any returns today. "I actually came to ask you something if you have a moment," Whis said, his gaze serious. He walked closer to the counter, pulling out a folded map from his bag. It was old, hand-drawn, with intricate details and annotations. "I've been correlating the information from the books you've lent me with some of my own research. Tidal charts, historical weather patterns, lunar cycles, and I believe I've pinpointed a potential window for the Whis." Alara felt her breath catch. Her heart began to beat a little faster. "Really? When?" He unfolded the map on the counter, smoothing it out. It was a detailed topographical map of Oakhaven and its surrounding coastline, with faint pencil markings and calculations. His finger traced a line down to a small, isolated inlet. "Here, at Whisperwind Cove, according to the confluence of all the variables, the specific spring tide, the waning crescent moon, and the predicted shift in the prevailing wind direction, the conditions should align perfectly this coming Saturday evening." Alara leaned closer, her eyes scanning the markings. She had done similar calculations herself, countless times, but had never felt confident enough to commit to a specific date. Whis's meticulous notes and his quiet conviction lent a new weight to the possibility. "Saturday evening," she repeated, the words a soft prayer. "After sunset." "Precisely. The optimal window appears to be between twilight and midnight, when the sea is at its calmest and the air cools, creating a more stable atmospheric condition for sound to travel." He looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers, a shared excitement flickering between them. "I've never witnessed anything like it, Alara, but everything points to this being a genuine phenomenon, and I was hoping you might be willing to accompany me." Alara's heart fluttered, a mixture of surprise and profound joy. She had always imagined witnessing the Whis alone, a private communion with the past. But the thought of sharing such a singular experience with Whis, who understood its significance, felt unexpectedly right. It felt less lonely, somehow. I would love to, Whis," she said, her voice imbued with a quiet awe. "More than anything, I've dreamed of it for years." A genuine, warm smile spread across his face. "Excellent. I've already scouted the path. It's a bit rough in places, but manageable. We should probably leave an hour or so before the window to account for the walk and give us time to settle in." They spent the rest of the afternoon poring over the map, discussing logistics, and sharing their quiet anticipation. Alara felt a spark of adventure ignite within her, a feeling she hadn't realized she was missing until now. It wasn't just the promise of the Whis. It was the promise of shared discovery, of walking beside someone who saw the world with the same gentle curiosity. The rest of the week passed in a blur of anticipation. Alara found herself tidying her shop with renewed vigor, humming softly as she worked. She packed a small thermos of hot tea, some hearty biscuits, and a thick blanket into a sturdy canvas bag. She chose her warmest walking boots and a sensible, waterproof coat. Every time the wind rustled outside, she imagined it carrying faint echoes, preparing for Saturday. When Saturday finally arrived, the weather was perfect. The sky was a vast, clear expanse of pale blue, gradually deepening to hues of rose and lavender as the sun began its descent. A gentle, consistent breeze, exactly as Whis had predicted, stirred the leaves on the ancient oak trees. Whis arrived at the storyteller's nook precisely on time, just as the last rays of sunlight were painting the western sky in fiery oranges and soft purples. He carried a rucksack, a pair of binoculars, and a small, delicate-looking instrument that Alara suspected was for measuring atmospheric conditions. He looked ready for an expedition, yet still retained his quiet, thoughtful demeanor. "Ready, Alara?" he asked, a hint of excitement in his usually calm voice. "As I'll ever be," she replied, slinging her canvas bag over her shoulder. She locked the shop door, the familiar click sounding oddly final, as if she were embarking on a journey far grander than a walk to a local cove. They set off, walking through the quiet, winding streets of Oakhaven. The village was settling into its evening rhythm, lights beginning to twinkle in cottage windows, the distant murmur of conversation drifting from the local pub. As they left the last of the houses behind, the path narrowed, winding through a thicket of gnarled trees and thorny bushes. The air grew cooler, carrying the sharper tang of the sea. Whis led the way, his steps sure and steady. He paused occasionally, pointing out an unusual rock formation or a particularly hardy wildflower clinging to the cliff face. Alara, usually so attuned to her surroundings, found her mind mostly focused on the journey's destination, her heart a drumbeat of anticipation. The path eventually opened up onto a narrow rocky ledge overlooking the sea. Below them, nestled between two towering cliffs, lay Whisperwind Cove. It was a crescent of shingle and smooth, dark stones framed by the rhythmic, gentle sigh of the incoming tide. The last vestiges of twilight painted the horizon in smudges of deep indigo and faint, lingering gold. The water was calm, reflecting the darkening sky like a vast, bruised mirror. "This is it," Whis whispered, his voice hushed with reverence. They carefully descended the final steep section of the path, their boots crunching on loose shale. Once on the shingle, the sounds of the sea became more immediate. The soft wash of tiny waves, the gentle clatter of pebbles as the tide receded. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the clean scent of salt and damp earth. They found a smooth, flat rock near the water's edge, large enough for them to sit comfortably side by side. Alara spread the blanket, and Whis placed their bags beside it. He then pulled out a small, portable anemometer and set it up, watching the tiny cup spin gently in the breeze. "Wind speed is perfect," he murmured. "And the tide is at its lowest point. Now we just wait for the moon." The moon, a slender crescent, was just beginning to peek over the eastern cliff, casting a silvery sheen on the water. A profound silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle lapping of the waves. Alara pulled her coat tighter, not from cold, but from a shiver of pure excitement. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the unique atmosphere of the cove wash over her. Then, just as the moon climbed higher, painting a shimmering path across the water, it began. At first, it was barely perceptible. A fleeting sensation, like a breath on the back of her neck when no one was there. Then, a faint, almost melodic hum, so soft it could have been the wind, or the distant buzzing of a tiny insect. But it wasn't either. It was different. It was a sound woven into the very fabric of the air, not reaching her ears directly, but resonating somewhere deeper, within her chest. A gentle, ethereal sigh, followed by another, and another, building into a delicate chorus. It wasn't words, not distinct sounds, but a tapestry of faint, overlapping whispers, like countless tiny bells chiming from a great distance, or the rustle of invisible silk. It was melancholic, yet strangely comforting, like hearing the echoes of a lullaby sung long ago. Alara opened her eyes and looked at Whis. His face, illuminated by the faint moonlight, was a study in quiet wonder. His eyes were closed, his head tilted slightly, listening. A soft smile played on his lips, a mixture of awe and profound understanding. The Whis were here, and she was finally, truly, listening. The sound swelled, no longer distant but encompassing, as if the air itself had become a living symphony. It wasn't just a sound Alara heard. It was a sensation that permeated her very being, a gentle hum resonating deep within her bones, a subtle warmth spreading through her chest. The melancholic quality remained, but it was now interwoven with a profound sense of ancient joy, like the sorrow of farewell mixed with the hope of reunion. She felt a lightness, as if gravity had momentarily loosened its hold, and her spirit stretched outward, reaching for the ethereal chorus. Her eyes fluttered open, then closed again, unable to fully process the visual world while her inner landscape was so vividly alive. It was like dreaming while awake, a cascade of fleeting images and emotions washing over her. She saw, or rather, I felt the shimmer of moonlight on dew-kissed leaves, the ancient roots of trees reaching deep into the earth, the slow, steady flow of hidden streams. There was a sense of profound interconnectedness, of everything belonging to everything else, a tapestry woven from time and starlight. Beside her, Rhys stirred slightly, a soft sigh escaping his lips. She could feel his presence, solid and reassuring, a tether in this swirling, beautiful chaos. The Whis weren't just for her. They were for, them. She felt a subtle shift in the way the sensations flowed, as if their two spirits, intertwined by touch and proximity, were creating a unique resonance chamber for the Whis song. It amplified the experience, made it richer, deeper, more vibrant. A particular thread of the Whis melody seemed to catch her attention, a silvery note that vibrated with the distinct echo of her grandmother's laugh, a sound she hadn't consciously recalled in years, yet it was unmistakable. It wasn't a literal sound, but an impression, a feeling of warmth and mischief, a memory imbued with light. Then came another, a fleeting image of her grandmother's hands, gnarled with age, meticulously tending to a cluster of night-blooming jasmine outside their old cottage. Elara remembered the scent, heady and sweet, filling the evening air. The Whis were not speaking in words, but in moments, in feelings, in the very essence of memory. They were the keepers of stories, not told, but felt. Rhys's hand, still clasped in hers, tightened almost imperceptibly. She opened her eyes, wanting to share this, to see if he was experiencing something similar. He was still listening, his face a canvas of serene contemplation. His eyelids, faintly veined, trembled slightly. A tear, clear and silent, traced a path down his temple and disappeared into his dark hair. It wasn't a tear of sadness, she realized, but of overwhelming beauty, of something profound being touched within him. She squeezed his hand, a silent question, a silent comfort. He responded with a gentle pressure, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. In that moment, the world outside their small bubble of moonlight and magic seemed to cease to exist. There was only the Whis, and the unspoken language passing between them. The Whis began to weave a narrative, not of events, but of themes. She felt the resilience of the forest, the slow, patient growth of ancient trees, the quiet wisdom held within their rings. She felt the gentle persistence of water, carving its path through stone, always moving, always seeking. And then, most powerfully, she felt the deep, abiding love that permeated everything, the love of a parent for a child, the love of a friend, the love of the earth for its creatures. It was a love that transcended time and space, a fundamental truth that hummed beneath the surface of existence. It was as if the Whis were gently peeling back layers of the mundane, revealing the extraordinary heart of the world. Elara felt a profound sense of belonging, not just to the forest, but to something much larger, an ancient lineage of listeners, of dreamers, of those who guarded the quiet magic. Her grandmother had been one of them. And now, she was too. And Rhys by her side was part of it all. The intensity of the Whis presence began to subtly recede, like a tide gently drawing back from the shore. The encompassing sound softened, diffusing into the night air, becoming once more that distant chime, that silken rustle. The warmth in her chest lingered, a comforting ember. The lightness in her spirit settled back into a grounded peace. Elara took a deep, shaky breath, the crisp night air filling her lungs with the scent of pine and damp earth. She looked at Rhys. His eyes were open now, gazing up at the scattered stars that had begun to peek through the thinning canopy. A look of quiet awe still softened his features, but it was mixed with a newfound clarity, a sense of having witnessed something truly sacred. He turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. There were no words, not yet. His eyes, usually so observant, so discerning, were now brimming with a tenderness that made her heart ache in the most beautiful way. He reached out with his free hand, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. His skin was warm, a solid anchor against the lingering ethereal sensations. "Elara," he whispered, his voice a little rough, as if unused after a long silence. Did you feel it?" She nodded, tears pricking her own eyes. "Everything. My grandmother. I felt her." A soft smile touched his lips, full of understanding. I know I felt a profound connection, not just to the forest, but to everything, and to you. His gaze deepened, unwavering. It was like the world opened up and showed us its heart. She leaned into his touch, her hand covering his on her cheek. It was like a lullaby, she murmured, remembering her initial thought. A very old, very wise lullaby. He nodded slowly. Yes, and it felt like a promise. A promise? She echoed, curious. A promise that there's more than what we see, more than what we know. A promise of belonging, he said, his voice soft, reflective. I felt a sense of belonging I haven't felt in a very long time, maybe ever. Alara's heart swelled. She understood completely. Her own lifelong yearning, the sense of being slightly adrift, had been soothed, if not entirely erased, by the Whis. It was as if a missing piece of her soul had clicked into place. And to hear Whis, who always seemed so self-assured, admit to a similar longing, created an even deeper bond between them. My grandmother always said the Whis would guide me, Alara said, her voice barely a whisper. She said they carried the wisdom of the ages. I always thought it was a beautiful story, a metaphor. I never imagined. She trailed off, shaking her head in wonder. She was right, Whis finished for her, his eyes still holding that distant, knowing light. She was more right than she knew. He lowered his hand from her cheek, but kept it intertwined with hers, their fingers laced together. What did you understand from them? Beyond the feelings? Alara closed her eyes for a moment, trying to distill the overwhelming experience into coherent thoughts. It wasn't like words, she began, choosing her words carefully. It was more like impressions, memories, a sense of history, of continuity, and love, Whis. So much love. She looked at him again. And my grandmother, I felt her presence so strongly, like she was right here, guiding me, showing me something. She paused, a new thought dawning. She told me the Whis only speak to those who are truly ready to listen, to those who are open of heart and spirit. Whis listened intently, his gaze unwavering. And what about the cottage? He asked gently. Did the Whis say anything about it? Alara frowned slightly, trying to recall. Not directly, but I felt a sense of its age, its purpose, like it's been a place of listening for a very long time, a sanctuary, and the Whis, they are connected to it, to the land around it. I felt that too, Whis confirmed. A deep resonance with the earth, with the ancient forest. It felt like the cottage wasn't just built on the land, but you for it. He squeezed her hand. It feels like a very important place, Alara, more than just a home. The moonlight, now unfettered by clouds, cast long silvery shadows across the forest floor. The air was cool, carrying the fresh scent of pine and damp moss. The world felt quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. A quiet imbued with magic, with unseen life, with the lingering echo of the Whis. I think, Alara said, her voice gaining a quiet conviction, that my grandmother didn't just leave me this cottage to find a new life. She left it to me so I could continue something, to listen, to tend to the magic. Whis nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. It makes sense. She knew you, Alara. She knew you had a heart open to wonder even if you'd forgotten it for a while. He smiled, a tender, knowing smile. She saw the magic in you, even before you did. His words touched a chord deep within her. For so long she had felt lost, disconnected from the very things that had once brought her joy. Her grandmother's passing had amplified that feeling, leaving her adrift in a sea of practicalities and the harsh realities of city life. Coming here, to this wild, untamed corner of the world, had been an act of desperation, a last-ditch effort to reclaim some semblance of herself. And now, in the quiet embrace of the Whis and Whis' steady presence, she was beginning to find not just herself, but a deeper, richer version of who she was meant to be. I think, she confessed, her voice soft, that I was afraid to listen, afraid of what I might find, or afraid that I wouldn't find anything at all. Afraid that the magic was just a child's fantasy. Whis reached out again, this time to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. His touch was feather-light, yet incredibly grounding. It's never a fantasy, Alara, it lives in your heart. Sometimes we just need a little help remembering how to see it. He paused, his gaze searching hers. "And I'm glad I was here to help you remember." A wave of warmth, distinct from the Whis' lingering glow, spread through her chest. It was the warmth of gratitude, of connection, of a burgeoning love that felt as ancient and as natural as the forest itself. She leaned into his touch, her eyelids fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the simple, profound intimacy of the moment. "Thank you, Whis," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For your patience, for your belief, for just being here." He smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that chased away the last vestiges of doubt. "My pleasure, Elara. Truly, this has been an extraordinary night." He looked up at the stars, then back at her. "But I think we should probably head back to the cottage. The night air is getting quite cool, and I imagine we both have a lot to process." She nodded, a small laugh escaping her lips. "A lot to process indeed." Slowly, carefully, they rose to their feet, their hands remaining intertwined. The descent from the ancient stones felt different now, imbued with a new significance. Each step was a quiet conversation with the earth, a recognition of the hidden life humming beneath their feet. The path, once merely a route, was now a sacred passage. As they walked back towards the faint glow of the cottage lights, the forest seemed to shimmer around them, alive with unseen presences. The air felt charged, yet peaceful. The sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the gentle murmur of the stream, were no longer just background noise, but elements of a grander symphony, a continuous, subtle song that had always been there waiting to be heard. Waiting to be heard. They walked in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts, yet acutely aware of the Ooter's presence. Elara kept replaying the sensations, the impressions, the profound sense of connection to her grandmother. It wasn't a goodbye her grandmother had left her, but an invitation. An invitation to step into her own power, to embrace a legacy she hadn't known she possessed. Reaching the cottage, Whis opened the door, and they stepped into the warm, inviting space. The fire in the hearth had dwindled to glowing embers, casting a soft orange light. The scent of wood smoke and beeswax filled the air, a comforting contrast to the wild, magical scents of the forest. He gently released her hand, but his gaze lingered on her face, searching, questioning, understanding. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, his voice full of concern. She took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "Yes, more than all right. Overwhelmed, perhaps, but in the best possible way." She walked over to the window, looking out into the darkened forest. The world looked the same but felt entirely different. "It feels like I've been given a key to a secret garden I didn't know existed." Whis joined her at the window, standing close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. "And what will you do with that key?" he asked, his voice gentle, encouraging. She turned to face him, her eyes shining with a newfound resolve. I think I need to explore it. To understand what it means to be a listener. To understand what my grandmother was doing here all these years. And to learn how to nurture this magic." He smiled, a genuine, heartwarming smile that reached his eyes. "I have a feeling you'll be a very good gardener of magic, Elara." He paused, then added, "And if you need any help with the exploration or the nurturing, I'd be honored to lend a hand." His offer hung in the air, a beautiful, unspoken promise. It wasn't just about exploring the forest or understanding the Whis. It was about exploring this new path together, nurturing their connection, and building something meaningful. "I'd like that very much, Whis," she said, her voice soft but firm. "More than you know." He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the curve of her jaw again, this time letting his thumb rest lightly on her lower lip. Her breath hitched. The air between them thrummed with a different kind of magic, a quiet electricity that had been building between them since the moment they met. His eyes, dark and deep in the soft light, held hers. "This place," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "This forest, the Whis. They've brought something extraordinary to light, haven't they?" She nodded, unable to speak. The intensity of his gaze, the tenderness of his touch, was almost overwhelming. "And not just the magic of the forest," he continued, his thumb gently stroking her lip, "but the magic between us." He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But she didn't. She leaned in too, drawn by an irresistible force, by the quiet certainty that this was right, this was true, this was meant to be. His lips, soft and warm, met hers. It was a gentle kiss, tender and hesitant at first, a question more than a demand. But as their lips lingered, a current of warmth surged between them, deepening the connection that had been forged under the moonlight. It was a kiss that tasted of pine and moonlight, of shared wonder and unspoken promises, of ancient magic and burgeoning love. Elara melted into it, her hand coming up to cup his cheek, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at his nape. The kiss deepened, becoming more assured, more passionate, yet still retaining that inherent gentleness that was so characteristic of Whis. It was a kiss that spoke of patience, of respect, of a deep, abiding affection that had found its voice in the quiet magic of the night. When they finally broke apart, it was only by a breath, their foreheads resting against each other. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his. His eyes were dark, softened by emotion, reflecting the firelight. "Wow," she whispered, a little breathless. He chuckled softly, a low rumbling sound that vibrated through her. Indeed, that was quite something. He pulled back slightly but kept her close, his hands resting lightly on her waist. "I think the Whis approved." She laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "I think so too." She looked around the cozy cottage, feeling more at home than she ever had before. "So what now, Whis?" He looked at her, his gaze steady and warm. "Now, Elara, we begin. We learn. We listen. We explore." He squeezed her waist gently. "This isn't just your grandmother's legacy anymore. It's ours." Her heart soared. "Oh, Whis, yes. 1,000 times yes." She leaned in and kissed him again, a quick, sweet kiss full of newfound joy and hope. "But first, I think we should probably get some sleep. We've had quite an adventure for one night." He smiled, a tired but contented smile. "A wise suggestion, though I have a feeling sleep might be a little elusive tonight, with everything that's happened." He led her towards the small bedroom, the glowing embers of the fire casting long, dancing shadows behind them. The bedroom was simple, cozy, filled with the comforting scent of lavender from the dried sachets her grandmother had placed in drawers. Whis sat on the edge of the bed, and Elara sat beside him. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts, with the echoes of the Whis, and with the electric hum of their shared connection. "I keep thinking about the lullaby," Elara said softly, breaking the silence. "The one my grandmother sang, and the Whis. It felt like the essence of that, like a song of comfort and belonging." Whis reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers once more. "It felt like that for me too, like a forgotten melody, suddenly remembered. And it made me realize how much I've missed that kind of quiet magic." He looked at her, his gaze tender. "I've spent so long chasing tangible things, solving concrete problems. The forest has always been a place of order for me, of ecological balance. But tonight, it showed me its heart, its soul. And it showed you mine, I think," Elara added, a blush rising to her cheeks. He chuckled softly. "That too, Elara, that too." He squeezed her hand. "I think we have a lot to discover, Danara. About this place, about the Whis, and about ourselves, and about each other." He used the endearment naturally, as if it had always belonged between them. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long, the path uncertain, but tonight, under the watchful eyes of the ancient forest and the gentle chorus of the Whis, she had found something she hadn't even known she was searching for. Not just a home, but a purpose. Not just a connection to her past, but a vibrant, hopeful future. And a love that felt as deep and as timeless as the magic around them. "I can't wait to see what tomorrow brings," she murmured, her voice laced with anticipation. Whis gently kissed the top of her head. "Me neither, Elara, me neither." He held her close, and for a long time, they simply sat there, bathed in the soft moonlight filtering through the window, listening to the quiet breathing of the forest, and the steady, comforting rhythm of their own hearts beating as one. The Whis might have faded for now, but their song had woven itself into the fabric of Elara's soul, and into the blossoming love between her and Whis, promising endless wonder and a lifetime of shared discovery. This was just the beginning. The first sliver of dawn painted the window in hues of rose and gold, stirring Alara from a sleep more profound and peaceful than any she had known. She awoke tangled in Rhys's arms, his steady breath a warm whisper against her hair, his scent, pine and damp earth, utterly rise, enveloping her. A soft smile touched her lips. This was real. The Whis hadn't been a dream, their love, even less so. She stirred, and Rhys's arm tightened instinctively before he, too, began to wake. His eyes, the color of moss after a rain, fluttered open, finding hers immediately. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation, only a profound tenderness that mirrored her own heart. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice husky with sleep and affection. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch feather light. "Good morning," she replied, her voice a little shaky with emotion. She leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, the comforting weight of his presence. I haven't slept like that in years. Maybe ever." He chuckled softly. "The forest sleeps deeply after a long song, and perhaps your heart found its rhythm." Alara's gaze searched his. "And yours." Rhys's expression grew serious, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "Mine has found its missing melody, Alara. It feels complete." He paused, then continued, his voice soft but firm. "You belong here, with me, with the forest." A wave of emotion swelled in Alara's chest, so potent it brought tears to her eyes. All her life she had searched for a place to belong, a sense of home that eluded her. She'd found it not in bricks and mortar, but in the heart of a man and the soul of a whispering forest. "I want to stay," she confessed, the words tumbling out, raw and honest. "I want to open my bookstore here. I want to learn the forest's secrets alongside you. I want to build a life." Rhys's smile widened, a joyful light entering his eyes. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, then her temple, then lingered at the corner of her mouth before capturing her lips in a gentle, reassuring kiss. It was a promise, a confirmation, a quiet celebration. "Then we shall," he whispered against her lips. "Silverwood will be your home, and my home will be yours, and the Whis, they will sing for us every day." Over breakfast, simple fare of berry tarts baked by Rhys and strong forest tea, they spoke of practicalities, weaving their dreams into the fabric of reality. The old, disused cottage next to the general store, which Alara had initially eyed, became the focus of their plans. It was small, sturdy, and with a little work, could transform into the cozy haven of her literary dreams. Rhys, ever practical, offered to help with the renovations, his hands skilled and strong. The news of Alara's decision to stay spread through Silverwood like wildfire, carried on the gentle breeze. The villagers, who had initially been curious but reserved, now welcomed her with open arms. They saw the quiet joy in Rhys's eyes, the newfound sparkle in Alara's, and understood. Mrs. Gable, the baker, brought over a fresh loaf of sourdough and a jar of plum jam. Old Man Hemlock, the woodcarver, offered a finely carved sign for her future shop. Even the children, usually shy around strangers, would wave to her, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and mischievous curiosity. The next few weeks were a blur of activity and burgeoning love. Rhys divided his time between his guardian duties and helping Alara transform the dusty cottage into the Whispering Pages. He mended the roof, sanded ancient floorboards, and built sturdy shelves from reclaimed forest wood, his movements efficient and graceful. Alara, in turn, painted walls in warm, inviting colors, curated her collection of books, a mix of beloved classics, forgotten tales, and new adventures, and started to gather local stories, intending to create a special section dedicated to Silverwood's rich folklore. Their days were filled with comfortable silences, shared laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of creation. Evenings were spent by Rhys's hearth, reading aloud to each other, sharing meals, or simply sitting in comfortable silence, their hands clasped, listening to the forest's lullaby. The Whis, though not always as potent as that first night, were a constant, subtle presence, a gentle hum beneath the surface of their lives, affirming their connection. Alara found she could now hear them more clearly, a symphony of rustling leaves, trickling streams, and the distant calls of unseen creatures, all woven together into a living song that spoke directly to her soul. One crisp autumn afternoon, as they were admiring the freshly painted sign for the Whispering Pages, a figure emerged from the forest path. It was Master Thorn, the village elder, his silver hair neatly braided, his eyes keen and knowing. He was a man of few words, but his presence commanded respect. "Elara," he rumbled, his voice like dry leaves. "Whis, the shop is coming along well." "Thank you, Master Thorn," Elara replied, a little nervous under his gaze. He nodded, his eyes lingering on the shop, then on Elara. "The Whis have been restless of late. A subtle shift. They speak of imbalance." Whis stepped forward, his expression serious. "I've felt it too, Master Thorn. A strange stillness in the western woods near the old growth. The smaller creatures are less active there." Master Thorn looked directly at Elara. "Your connection to the Whis is strong, child. Stronger than any outsider I have seen. Perhaps stronger than even Riss's in certain ways." He paused, his gaze unblinking. "The forest needs its guardians, but sometimes it needs a new voice to interpret its song." Elara felt a thrill of trepidation and purpose. "How can I help?" "Listen," Thorn instructed simply. "Listen to the silence. Listen to the Whis. They will guide you. Whis will guide you in the ways of the forest. Together, you may find what troubles its heart." With another nod, he turned and melted back into the shadows of the trees, leaving Elara and Whis to exchange a look of shared concern. The next morning, armed with a small satchel of provisions and a map Whis had drawn, they ventured into the western woods. The silence Master Thorn spoke of was palpable, a heavy blanket muffling the usual vibrant sounds of the forest. The birdsong was muted, the rustle of leaves seemed duller, and even the air felt heavy, devoid of its usual crisp vitality. As they walked deeper, Elara felt a prickle of unease. The vibrant green of the moss seemed to have dulled, some leaves on the ancient oaks were tinged with an unnatural brown, and the usually clear stream that meandered through this section of the woods flowed sluggishly, its surface covered in a faint iridescent film. "This isn't right," Whis murmured, his brow furrowed. He knelt, examining a patch of wilting ferns. "The earth feels depleted, lifeless." Elara closed her eyes, trying to reach out with her senses, to listen beyond the immediate quiet. The Whis here were not silent but distorted, like a melody played out of tune, a faint, mournful dirge instead of their usual harmonious hum. She felt a deep ache, a sense of sorrow emanating from the trees. "It's like the forest is sick," she whispered, opening her eyes. "It's in pain." Whis looked at her, his expression a mixture of worry and admiration. "You feel it too. What does it tell you?" Elara concentrated, letting the faint, troubled Whis wash over her. It wasn't a specific message, more a sensation, a direction. She pointed vaguely deeper into the woods. "It feels like it's coming from that way, a deeper wound." They pressed on, their pace slow and deliberate, Riza's hand occasionally finding hers, a silent reassurance. After another hour they stumbled upon the source of the distress. It was a small, hidden clearing, usually a place of vibrant life, but now it was a scene of desolation. Several ancient trees, their branches once reaching majestically towards the sky, were sickly and dying, their leaves shriveled and dark. At the center of the clearing, a shallow pool of water, usually crystal clear and teeming with life, was now murky and stagnant, ringed by dead vegetation. "What in the Whis' name?" Whis breathed, his voice filled with horror. He moved closer to the pool, examining the strange, oily film on its surface. "This isn't natural. Someone has done this." Elara felt a sudden, sharp pang from the Whis, a jolt of alarm. She looked down, her gaze drawn to a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer in the mud near the pool's edge. She knelt, brushing away a layer of dirt, and uncovered a small metallic glint. It was a shard of something artificial, not from the forest, with a faint, unnatural scent. "Look," she said, showing it to Whis. "This isn't part of the forest. It feels industrial." Whis took the shard, turning it over in his calloused fingers. His jaw tightened. "This is from outside. Someone has trespassed, and not just to admire the old growth. They've brought something here, something that poisons the earth." His eyes scanned the clearing, looking for tracks, for any sign of human interference. "There are faint tracks here, almost overgrown. Not recent, but not ancient either. Perhaps a month or two ago." The implications were chilling. Someone had deliberately harmed the forest, and the damage had been slowly, subtly spreading, unnoticed until now. Whis, usually so calm and collected, was visibly agitated. The forest was his life, his charge, and to see it wounded so deeply, so maliciously, stirred a fierce protectiveness in him. "We need to report this to Master Thorn," Whis stated, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "And we need to find out who did this." Elara placed a hand on his arm, sensing his distress. "We will. But first, can we try to help it?" She looked at the dying trees, her heart aching. "The Whis are crying out. Maybe we can ease their pain even a little." Whis looked at her, then back at the blighted clearing. He knew the traditional ways, the forest remedies, but this felt different, more insidious. "I don't know, Elara. This kind of poison, it seeps deep." "But the Whis are still here," she insisted, closing her eyes again, listening to the faint, mournful hum. "They're wounded, but not silenced. They're calling for help." She moved towards one of the suffering trees, placing her hands on its rough bark. She concentrated, trying to project a sense of healing, of solace, her own energy flowing outwards, guided by the Whis' soft, desperate plea. It was an instinctual act, born of compassion and her deepening connection to the forest. Whis watched her, a mixture of awe and concern on his face. He had seen the Whis guide her, seen her intuition about the forest, but this was different. This was an active attempt at communion, at healing. He knelt beside her, placing his own hand on the tree's trunk, adding his steady, grounded energy to hers. He focused on the life force of the forest, on its inherent resilience, sending thoughts of strength and restoration. For a long time they stayed there, hands pressed to the ailing tree, their minds focused, their hearts intertwined with the suffering forest. Elara felt a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the Whis, a tiny spark of hope amidst the despair. It wasn't a cure, not yet, but it felt like a balm, a soothing touch to a grievous wound. When they finally pulled away, exhausted but resolute, the clearing still looked bleak, but Elara felt a flicker of something new. "It's not enough to heal it fully," she said, her voice soft. "But I think we gave it a little strength, a little hope, enough for it to hold on while we find a way to fix this." Whis nodded, his hand finding hers, his grip firm. "You're right. We need to find the source. This isn't just a blight, it's an attack. And Silverwood doesn't take kindly to those who harm its heart." They returned to the village, the weight of their discovery heavy on their shoulders. Master Thorn listened to their account with a grim expression, examining the metallic shard Elara had found. He called a meeting of the village elders, and the somber news spread through Silverwood. The community, usually peaceful and self-sufficient, was stirred to action. The forest was their lifeblood, their sanctuary. Its protection was paramount. Over the next few days, Whis meticulously tracked the faintest traces of the trespassers. He followed almost invisible disturbances in the undergrowth, broken twigs, and faint scuff marks that only his experienced eyes could discern. Elara, guided by the Whis, helped him, her intuition pointing out paths he might have overlooked, sensing subtle shifts in the forest's energy that indicated a recent passage. Their search led them further afield than they usually ventured, to the very edge of Silverwood's traditional boundaries, where the ancient forest began to thin, giving way to more open, rocky terrain. Here, the Whis grew fainter, their song replaced by the harsh whisper of the wind through sparse pines. Finally, they found it. Tucked away in a shallow ravine, partially hidden by overgrown bushes, was a makeshift camp. It was abandoned now, but the signs of recent occupation were clear. A cold campfire, discarded food wrappers, and scattered tools. Among the tools, Whis found a small, rusted shovel and a half-empty canister of a strange viscous liquid that smelled faintly metallic and acrid. "This is it," Whis said, his voice grim. "This is what they used. This is what they poured into the stream and the pool." He recognized the symbols on the canister, a faded, almost illegible logo from an old mining company known for its environmentally destructive practices, long thought defunct. As they examined the camp, Elara's gaze fell upon a discarded journal, tucked beneath a makeshift tent flap. It was waterlogged and partially torn, but enough remained to piece together a fragmented story. It detailed the desperate attempts of a small group of prospectors, led by a man named Kale, to find a mythical silver vein rumored to exist deep within the Silverwood forest. They had believed the Whis to be a nuisance, a natural interference that needed to be neutralized to access their prize. The poisonous liquid was their crude, ignorant attempt to silence the forest, to clear a path, to exploit its riches. A wave of anger, cold and sharp, washed over Alara. To deliberately harm such beauty, to silence such magic, for greed, it was unforgivable. Whis, reading over her shoulder, clenched his fists. They were blind to the true treasure of this forest, he said, his voice laced with sorrow and fury. They saw only what they could take. The journal also revealed that Kale and his men had failed to find the vein, had grown paranoid, and eventually fearing the forest's vengeances, which Alara suspected was just the Whis driving them mad with their discordant sorrow, had fled in a hurry, leaving their poison and their damage behind. Back in Silverwood, the journal provided the missing pieces. Master Thorn and the elders understood the full extent of the threat. The poison needed to be neutralized, the land healed. Whis, with his deep knowledge of forest ecology, began to formulate a plan. He knew of certain mosses and fungi, deep within the ancient parts of the forest, that possessed natural purifying properties. It would be a slow, arduous process, requiring careful cultivation and spreading. Alara's role, however, became equally vital. The Whis, she explained, were not just sounds. They were the very life force of the forest, its collective consciousness. To truly heal the land, they needed to soothe the Whis, to restore their song, to help the forest remember its own inherent power to heal. So they embarked on their mission. Days were spent deep in the forest. Whis led teams of villagers, carefully harvesting the purifying mosses and fungi, preparing the soil in the blighted clearing, and gently introducing the healing agents. It was backbreaking work, but the community rallied, their shared love for Silverwood driving them. Alara, meanwhile, spent hours in the affected areas, often alone, sometimes with Whis. She would sit among the ailing trees, her hands on their bark, her mind open. She would sing to the forest, not with her voice, but with her spirit, letting the Whis guide her, helping them to find their way back to harmony. She would hum ancient tunes, remembering melodies from her childhood, and weave them with the faint, struggling whispers of the forest, creating a new, healing symphony. She felt the Whis respond, a gradual shift from discord to a fragile, budding harmony. It was an exhausting, deeply emotional process, but with each passing day, she felt the forest stirring, beginning to mend. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, they sat by the blighted pool, which, though still murky, showed faint signs of improvement. A tiny green shoot had sprouted at its edge. The Whis in this area, while not fully vibrant, were no longer despairing. They hummed with a quiet, persistent hope. Whis looked at Alara, his eyes filled with a profound gratitude and love. "You did it, Alara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You found the new voice the forest needed. You brought it back to life." Alara leaned her head on his shoulder, tired but content. "We did it, Whis. Together. Your strength and knowledge, my connection. It was a partnership." She paused, then added, "The forest is resilient. It just needed a little help remembering." As the weeks turned into months, the healing of the western woods became a testament to their combined efforts and the spirit of Silverwood. The trees regained their vibrant green, the stream ran clear again, and the sounds of life returned, stronger and more joyful than before. The Whis in that area sang with a renewed vigor, a triumphant chorus of recovery. During this time, Alara's bookstore, The Whispering Pages, officially opened its doors. It was a warm, inviting space, filled with the scent of old paper and fresh coffee. Villagers flocked to it, not just for books, but for stories, for conversation, and for the gentle, welcoming presence of Alara herself. She became an integral part of Silverwood, her wisdom and empathy cherished by its residents. She started a weekly storytelling circle for the children, weaving tales of the forest, its guardians, and its magic, ensuring the next generation understood the sacred bond. And through it all, her love for Whis deepened, growing stronger with every shared challenge, every quiet evening, every moment of profound connection. He was her anchor, her steady heart, and she, in turn, was his wild song, his gentle whisper, opening his world to new depths of emotion and wonder. One spring morning, as the forest burst forth in a riot of new life, Whis led Alara to a hidden glade, a place they had discovered during their healing quest, now vibrant and alive with the Whis' joyous hum. Sunlight dappled through the fresh leaves, painting shifting patterns on the mossy ground. Wildflowers bloomed in a riot of color, and the air was sweet with their perfume. He stopped in the center of the glade, turning to face her, his hands gently taking hers. His eyes, clear and earnest, held a depth of love that made Alara's heart swell. "Alara," he began, his voice a little softer than usual. "When you first came to Silverwood, I thought you were just another passing traveler. I never imagined you would become the very heart of this place and of mine." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, intricately carved wooden box. He opened it to reveal a ring, not of gold or silver, but of polished, dark wood, inlaid with tiny, iridescent mosses and a single sparkling dewdrop captured in resin. It was a ring born of the forest, unique and utterly beautiful. "This ring," he continued, his thumb stroking her knuckles, "was carved by Master Thorn, from the oldest oak in the heart of Silverwood, the one we healed together. The mosses are from the purifying patches. The dewdrop, it's a captured tear from the Whis, a symbol of the magic you brought back to us." He knelt before her, his gaze unwavering. "Alara, my gentle whisper, my steadfast heart, will you marry me? Will you make my home your home, our lives a shared journey, and our love a song that echoes through the Whis forever?" Tears streamed down Alara's face, tears of pure, unadulterated joy. This was it. The belonging, the love, the home she had always yearned for, embodied in this man, in this forest. "Yes," she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Whis, yes, 1,000 times yes." He rose, a radiant smile transforming his face, and slid the wooden ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, a symbol of their unique bond. He pulled her into a fierce, tender embrace, and they kissed, surrounded by the loving embrace of the glade, the Whis singing a celebratory chorus around them, a symphony of joy and promise. Their wedding was a quiet, intimate affair, held in that very glade, officiated by Master Thorn. The entire village attended, their faces beaming with happiness. Alara wore a simple gown woven from local linen, adorned with wildflowers. Whis, handsome in his traditional guardian attire, looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Their vows were simple, heartfelt promises of love, companionship, and shared guardianship of the forest. The Whis, on that day, were almost overwhelmingly joyful, their music swirling around them, a blessing from the heart of Silverwood itself. They built their home together, a charming cottage nestled deeper in the forest, not far from Ria's original cabin, but with a new, larger space for Alara's expanding book collection and a cozy hearth for their shared evenings. It was a home filled with the scent of wood smoke, old books, and the quiet magic of their love. Years passed, bringing with them a tapestry of shared joys and gentle growth. Alara's bookstore flourished, becoming a hub of stories and community. She compiled and published a collection of Silverwood's forgotten folklore, enchanting readers far beyond the village borders, and bringing new admirers to the magic of the Whis. Whis continued his guardianship, his bond with the forest deepened by Alara's presence, his understanding of its subtle language expanded by her intuitive insights. They had 2 children, a boy with Whis' steady eyes and Alara's gentle curiosity, and a girl with Alara's fiery spirit and Whis' deep connection to the earth. Both children grew up with the Whis as their lullaby, learning to listen to the forest's secrets, guided by their parents' profound love for nature and for each other. On quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Alara and Whis would often sit by their hearth, holding hands, listening to the soft breathing of the forest outside. The wooden ring on Alara's finger had softened with age, its mosses a permanent part of its structure, the dewdrop still catching the light. Their love, like the ancient trees of Silverwood, had deepened its roots, weathered seasons, and grown stronger, more beautiful with time. The Whis still sang, sometimes a quiet murmur, sometimes a vibrant symphony, but always, always, a part of their lives. It was the soundtrack to their shared journey, a constant reminder of the magic that had brought them together, and the endless wonder that awaited them in every new day. This was their story, woven into the fabric of Silverwood, a testament to a love found in whispers and wild places, a love that brought home to a searching heart and a song to a waiting soul. And as they drifted off to sleep, nestled in each other's arms, listening to the gentle rhythm of their beating hearts and the timeless song of the Whis, they knew, with absolute certainty, that their shared discovery would indeed last a lifetime and beyond. Their story was just beginning, truly, for love, like the forest, was an ever-unfolding wonder.